In the turbulent era of the 1930s, amidst the chaos of the Great Depression, Evelyn "Billie" Frechette found herself entangled in a whirlwind romance with the infamous John Dillinger. While Dillinger and his gang roamed the Midwest, robbing banks and eluding capture, Billie's life became a parallel saga of love, loyalty, and peril. From secret rendezvous and lavish gifts to desperate escapes and courtroom dramas, her story is one of profound devotion amidst danger. This is the tale of Evelyn Frechette, whose love for a legendary outlaw led her down a path where romance and crime intertwined, and every day was a fight for survival. Born on September 15, 1907 in northern Wisconsin, aptly named "the place where there is grass," she was raised among 5 siblings. Her French descendant father was smitten by a Native American woman from the Menominee tribe, who once roamed the lands between Wisconsin and Michigan, near the Great Lakes, and were affectionately dubbed the Wild Rice Eaters. Growing up on the Neopit Reservation, Evelyn received a religious education from missionaries who likely preached more about sin than salvation. When her father died, she decided to adopt his name, Billie, because what better way to honor your dad than by gender-bending through nomenclature? But when memories weighed heavier than a missionary's sermon, she fled the nest for a high school in Flandreau, South Dakota. After enduring the institutional joylessness, Evelyn moved to her aunt's house to train as a nurse. However, the beautiful Evelyn felt suffocated in her traditional world. She longed for the big city and set her sights on Chicago, a marvelous metropolis full of strangers, lights, and endless possibilities. Another reason hastened her decision: the need to hide her condition from her relatives. She was 2 months pregnant. There, she hoped to find a place to take care of her problem. But it turned out hospitals weren't big fans of sinful conditions. Twice, Evelyn was chased away by hospitals that suggested she try the Beulah Home for Unwed Mothers at 2144 North Clark Street. She arrived alone at this dingy, rundown establishment run by unscrupulous doctors who preyed on desperate women. The director, a self-proclaimed reverend, and his wife, whom the heavily pregnant women had to call mother, handled the adoption formalities with all the charm of a snake oil salesman. Evelyn gave birth to a baby boy on April 24, 1928, and handed him over to them. Unfortunately, the unwanted children were sent to what journalists dubbed the death farm in Michigan, over 300 kilometers from the maternity home. The infant died at 5 months old under mysterious conditions, joining 18 other babies in an untimely demise. Shattered by this traumatic episode that marked her farewell to childhood, Evelyn returned to her family on the reservation. However, she no longer fit into that world, where her place, role, and life were expected to be codified to mold her into a wife and mother. Tribe members looked at her with disdain. She had enjoyed earthly pleasures, enough to tarnish her reputation and place her on the community's fringe. Her dreams beckoned, and Evelyn, or Billie as she preferred, arrived in Chicago in the spring of 1932. Immersed among thousands of strangers, she was no longer the unstable, capricious, and strange woman who wanted to live her own life, but just one of the many workers driven to the big cities by the economic crisis in search of a livelihood. She worked as a nurse, maid, or waitress, it didn't matter. But more importantly, she reunited with her sister. Her sister was an actress who used their exotic origins to attract spectators, dressing in skins, painting her face, and dancing in a troupe in the style of Native Americans, arousing the curiosity of 1930s Chicago. Finally, she felt alive, far from the boredom that surrounded her childhood years marked by household chores and seasons. Evelyn performed in churches, at benefit shows for the needy. However, being a mediocre actress, she quickly abandoned the costume to help with washing dishes and preparing traditional Indian dishes like dried corn and wild rice in the kitchen. The intimate boredom mingled with loneliness withers a woman's heart. Billie sought strong emotions. She met a man named Welton Spark. He wasn't the love of her life, she knew, but he served as a placeholder while waiting for the right one. Alas, in Depression-era Chicago, everything moved fast. Life burned at both ends, and one had to grab men before they were killed or arrested. Shortly after they met, the unfortunate man attacked a postman, robbed him of his parcels, and was sentenced in July 1932 to 15 years in prison. Finally, something romantic, passion, and impossible love. Encouraged by the prison bars, she married him a month later in a quick ceremony at Cook County Jail. The project seemed appealing, but reality was different. Having an incarcerated husband only heightened her loneliness. His imprisonment made her feel like a failure, reflecting her own emptiness and justifying her fleeing attitude towards life. 1 year later, on a warm November night in 1933, Chicago, Evelyn Frechette perfects her bobbed brown hair, dabs on powder to highlight her sun-kissed skin, and caps it all off with a bold swipe of crimson lipstick. She's heading to her glamorous gig as a coat check attendant at a North Side cabaret. Is there any job more thrilling than one that lets you sip cocktails and have a rollicking good time with friends after your shift? This enchanting French Native American woman never finds herself in want of company. Amid bursts of laughter, she catches a man staring at her from across the room. He holds her gaze, and she responds with a sultry smile. Taking this as his cue, he saunters over to the table, recognizing one of the young women she's with. The acquaintance makes the introduction. This is Jack Harris. Evelyn doesn't bother with the name. After all, in this joint, everyone's playing make-believe, herself included. Plus, she wouldn't know him from Adam since she skips the newspaper reading. Unbeknownst to Evelyn, this dapper, mustachioed fellow broke out of Lima Prison in Ohio on October 12, 1933. He'd been doing time for bank robbery until 3 of his old cellmates staged a prison break, shot the sheriff, swiped the cell keys, and locked the sheriff's wife in a cell, all to spring him. She's blissfully unaware that he's a nationwide fugitive, or that he's packing a less-than-charming case of gonorrhea. Jack Harris is, in fact, the infamous John Dillinger. With his slicked-back hair, cutting-edge fashion, and that ever-so-slight head tilt, he pulls off a look that screams mischievous dandy. All she sees are his eyes. Those eyes were something else, piercing, electric, with a hint of amused indifference. They met mine and left me spellbound for a moment. At 25, she feels like she's been sleepwalking until now. Suddenly, everything was different. That evening, she doesn't bother digging deeper. He's just Jack Harris, the charming guy who dances with her, grins at her, and drops the line, "Where have you been all my life?" At 30, he's already a master at winning her over, showering her with jewelry, cars, and even exotic pets, taking her out every night, in short, offering her everything a girl could want. John Dillinger is the epitome of a gentleman, she muses. He treats me like a lady. Their relationship heats up, and the duo spends 3 or 4 nights a week as intimate friends. They rendezvous at 901 Addison Street, an apartment shared with several of his rogue pals, living by night, partying and partaking in what to the young woman seems like innocent fun. Mary Evelyn Frechette is not your run-of-the-mill gangster's Moll. A month later, John decides to leave the Windy City for some sun-soaked shenanigans. On December 19, 1933, he takes Billie to Florida. They rent a quaint 2-story cottage at 901 South Atlantic Avenue, Daytona Beach, with an ocean view that's perfect for, well, let's just say they weren't there for the tan. The next day, their merry band of outlaws joins them, ready to turn this holiday into a fiasco of felonious fun. G. Hoover, the man who thinks holiday is a dirty word, has the Bureau of Investigation's peepers on full alert. Dillinger, Evelyn Frechette, and 4 other couples have been in Daytona Beach since December 19th, whispers one of the internal tattletales to the director. They've had no local contact and have received neither telegrams nor long-distance calls. Translation: they're either really good at hide-and-seek or everyone else is just tired of their collect calls. It's time for some much-needed R&R, rebels and rascals. The men lounge in front of one of the 4 fireplaces or hit the links, because why not chase tiny balls when you're on the run? Meanwhile, the women are making quite the splash, riding horses in their swimsuits, according to a secret memo to J. Edgar, who almost needs the Heimlich when he reads the rest. The gang's moles are flaunting their beachwear and demanding takeout, refusing to cook. Even Mary, the bravest among them, has thrown in the dish towel. Clearly, these vixens are leading the nation into moral bankruptcy, indulging their basest desires. Catherine Kelly might be cooling her heels in prison for life, but how many more will follow her lead? It seems this contagion of decadence is infecting an entire generation. For Christmas, the neighbors set off firecrackers, while the gang members unleash their machine guns into the air before trading gifts. Mary scores a diamond watch from her fiancé. Billie presents her with a makeup set. In a move straight from the handbook of bizarre gift-giving, the former enemy surprises the newcomer with silk lingerie to please Johnny. John's gifts to Billie cater to her romantic heart and her luxury cravings. A diamond-encrusted promise ring and a platinum watch. His generosity doesn't stop there. Billie is lavished with department store goodies: 2 pairs of slippers, a pair of shoes, 2 pairs of dress shoes, 5 hats, 3 pairs of gloves, 3 robes, 3 silk pajamas, 18 dresses, 2 bulletproof vests, assorted automatic weapons with ammo, and road maps. Hoover's office, upon hearing of this extensive wardrobe, is not amused. What virtuous woman needs so many frivolous items? Billie couldn't agree more. Fashion is just fluff. Diamonds, however, are compact tokens of love. Yet all the sparkle in the world is useless if you have a mouthful of decayed teeth. Billie seizes the opportunity to visit Dr. Sidney at 256 South Beach Street for some dental work, including a tooth extraction and bridge preparation. Determined to make this Christmas one for the books, John plans an even bigger surprise for his fiancée: a car. Using a fake identity, he arranges with a notary to transfer his Essex terraplane to Billie, masquerading as his sister once Christmas Eve is over. Billie, driving without a license because why not, is ecstatic. The speed and the intoxicating sense of freedom from this new toy exhilarate her. However, John begins to feel Billie is enjoying too much liberty. His associate Pierpont is giving Billie far too much attention, which she doesn't seem to mind. One evening, John takes her for a romantic drive to the pier, stops the car, makes her get out and draws his gun. "You've played enough with Harry," he declares. "Do you have anything to say before I shoot you?" Billie, maintaining her composure and dignity, responds, "I'm not afraid to die. I don't want to live if you think such a thing of me." Her defiance and pride are precisely the proof of love John seeks. Satisfied, he restarts the car and they drive away. Better safe than sorry, John decides to ship his beloved off while he plots his next heist. The excuse is crystal clear. He orders her to go visit her still legal husband and file for divorce. Billie, sans her bridge and sporting some new bling, sets off to see her ex. A few days later, zooming back to Chicago, Billie is so drunk on speed that she loses control of her car. Without John, she's stuck in a fix with no way to reach him and risks getting nabbed. Her identity might be under wraps, but her description was plastered everywhere after the shootout at Dr. I's office. A mechanic, sniffing for more details about the car's origins, keeps it grounded for repairs. But Billie, with her typical flair, finds a nearby body shop in Milwaukee and smooth talks her way into trading the damaged car. For an extra $220, she buys a used terraplane coupe, a swift deal that would make Johnny proud if she ever finds him again. Back in Chicago, John plays the disappearing fiancé. Billie sends a flurry of cables to the gang's women, trying to track him down, and finally arranges a meeting. Her dear Johnny hasn't just been twiddling his thumbs. On January 15th, 1934, around 3 p.m., the fugitive men park their blue Plymouth in front of the First National Bank of East Chicago. Pierpont waits in the car while John, with a machine gun hidden in a trombone case, struts into the building. Inside, Dillinger whips out his Thompson, scaring the living daylights out of a dozen employees and 20 customers, while his trombone-toting pal bags $20,000. They move quickly, executing their plan with precision. But they didn't count on the 8 policemen already surrounding the building. One sharp employee had discreetly hit the alarm. John takes the bank's assistant manager hostage and makes a break for it. An officer empties his magazine at him, but Dillinger, sporting a bulletproof vest, returns fire. He hops into the car while the officer meets his demise in a hail of bullets. John Dillinger was a mere robber until now, but this act cements his status as a murderer. Robbery is one thing, but killing, especially a cop, is another. Every city police officer is now hell-bent on catching him. Meanwhile, Billie waits endlessly, with no news, her days stretching into an agonizing eternity. Finally, on January 19th, 1934, Billie reunites with John. He looks like death warmed over and hasn't had a bite to eat since the heist. They both need to scram and come up with new identities. They'll be Mr. and Mrs. Frank Sullivan from Wisconsin. Billie also has a tiny Boston Terrier puppy that Johnny gave her, because who doesn't want an adorable sidekick when you're on the lam? Their license plates have been flagged, so a vehicle swap is in order to slip through the dragnet. En route to Tucson, Arizona, they stop at a garage. John has his eye on a black Hudson Club sedan, but needs his wife's nod of approval first. Billie, with her pint-sized pooch, waits outside since dogs aren't allowed inside. The salesman, amused by the sight of a man seeking his wife's opinion, jokes that John might even let her drive. John, stone-faced, hands over the furry bundle to Billie, who then test drives the car. Unfortunately, the squirmy pup makes a break for it, causing a comical chase involving the gangster and the garage staff. Luckily, Billie gives the Hudson the thumbs up. Once the deal is sealed, the attendant swiftly transfers their luggage from the old car to the new one. He's taken aback by the weight of a hefty zippered bag and looks suspiciously at its contents. Billie, with a knowing smile, quips, "A lady must always have a lot of things when she travels." Satisfied, the attendant lets it slide, and the couple heads to the Hotel Congress in Tucson, hoping to lie low in the city's mild climate near the Mexican border. Perhaps too mild. On January 22nd at 7:30 a.m., Billie is jolted awake by a tremendous racket and a sharp smell. The hotel is ablaze. Once again they scramble, this time down the fire escape, leaving behind their luggage and precious ammunition. The firefighters, who manage to salvage the trunks and packages, instantly recognize John. Arrested 2 days later, he is carted off to Crown Point Prison in Indiana. The ashes have marked the end of their run. Billie spends Valentine's Day in a state of utter despair. Without Johnny, she's a wreck, allergic to solitude and the anxiety it brings. How can she visit him when she's also a wanted woman? Quick to find a solution, she regains her energy and audacity. On February 16, 1934, Billie accompanies Louis Piquette, Johnny's lawyer and former Chicago prosecutor. With such an emissary, her man will soon be free. And if she gets nabbed, Louis will sort it out. She shows up at the prison on his arm, donning a black crepe dress, a turban, and a faux fur collar on a poplin jacket. To gather courage before facing the body search, she downs a good measure of liquid bravery. Come what may. The visit starts poorly. Asked to declare her identity, Billie claims to be Mrs. Dillinger and refuses to provide any other name. Realizing they won't get more out of her, the sheriff settles for noting her physical description. 25 years old, dark-skinned, 58 to 60 kilograms, 1.70 m, very dark eyes, bobbed hair, round face, and for nationality, half Indian, Mexican, or Italian. Billie manages to enter the prison while hiding her true identity. When she sees John in prison garb and confined within 4 walls, she can't hold back her emotions and the urge to hug him, quickly restrained by the guards. She whispers what they think are innocent words of love in his ear before leaving, as the visiting time is over. Billie exits the prison without looking back, trailing her lawyer. This audacious man, who isn't quite like the others, knows how to find solutions when legal ones run out. He has a secret trick up his sleeve. On March 3, 1934, at 8 a.m. in Chicago, Evelyn Frechette knocks on Louis Piquette's office door. They sit by the radio, anticipation crackling in the air. Something big is about to go down. Shortly after 9 a.m., a guard making his morning rounds at Crown Point Prison is greeted by a revolver pressed to his back. John dictates his terms: comply or be killed. Dillinger is very convincing, especially since his weapon is no ordinary firearm but a wooden gun. Carved from a washboard and stained with shoe polish, the fake gun miraculously entered the prison shortly after his lawyer and fiancée's visit. Without giving the guard time to realize the trick, John locks him in a cell and takes his keys. He then embarks on a tour of the prison, locking up every guard, official, and employee he encounters until he finds the exit. The morning news is abuzz with the spectacular escape, accomplished without firing a single shot. Billie is over the moon. Piquette hurriedly sends an assistant to fetch freshly printed newspapers and some celebratory drinks. Billie insists on toasting with gin Ricky cocktails. In their excitement, they overlook one crucial detail: what to do with Johnny now. The resourceful lawyer taps into his network and contacts an old flame, hoping she's still smitten enough to host a couple of friends for a few days. Once she agrees, he rushes Billie to 434 Wellington Avenue. The accommodating hostess opens the door with a smile, only to freeze in horror upon recognizing the woman whose face she saw in the morning papers next to Dillinger's. Housing her is out of the question. She won't even let Billie step inside. But Billie refuses to budge. Louis Piquet has given Johnny this address as the rendezvous point, and she will wait for him there. Drunk, but still chic, she decides to camp in the hallway until he arrives. Finally, he appears. She throws herself into his arms, soaking his neck with tears right there in the open as they're being hunted and the noose tightens around them. For now, they must flee, ditching their car several kilometers away in front of a random house before continuing their escape by tram. Once safe, she can embrace him to her heart's content, defying fate and the law with every heartbeat. On March 16th, Billie pays a visit to Louis Piquet's office with $2,300 in cash to settle Johnny's legal fees before jetting off to Indianapolis. She must entrust the gangster with a most precious item, the infamous wooden gun that facilitated Johnny's daring escape, along with a cheeky message from the fugitive himself. "Don't worry about me, darling, I'm having a blast. They just can't seem to accept that I locked up 8 inspectors and a dozen guards with a wooden gun. You should have seen their faces. Ha! 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 Seeing that was worth 10 years of my life. Don't ever part with this gun, because when you feel sad, all you have to do is look at it and have a good laugh." With Johnny's affairs in order, Billie makes a quick exit from Indianapolis to reunite with her love in St. Paul, Minnesota, accompanied by 2 other gang members and their partners. They rent an apartment at 95 South Lexington Avenue. With each new city comes a new identity. Here they are Mr. and Mrs. Carl T. Hellman, or fittingly, Mr. and Mrs. Inferno. Billie now sports red hair to match her fiery new pseudonym. The escape and its dangers have an unexpected effect on Billie, transforming her into what she always despised, a devoted housewife. She finds joy in cooking, ironing Johnny's suits, and occasionally going to the cinema. One evening, Dillinger takes his redhead to see Fashion of 1933, a retrospective of the past year's trends and styles. The screening has side effects. Billie is struck by a shopping impulse that Johnny is eager to satisfy. He buys a new Hudson Deluxe 8 sedan to better transport Madam's parcels. On March 31st, 1934, at 10:30 a.m., snow blankets the city sidewalks. 2 agents knock on the door and request to speak with Mr. Hellman. Through the security chain, Billie apologizes, claiming she's not presentable yet and suggests they return later in the afternoon when her husband will be back. The officers aren't fooled. They demand she get dressed and allow them to search the apartment. With a broad smile, Billie closes the door, knowing she'll be in their clutches any moment. She races to the bedroom to alert Johnny, who leaps out of bed, revolvers already in hand. Meanwhile, one of the agents seizes the opportunity to circle the building and encounters one of the gang members making a dash for it. Identity check. The man insists he's a soap salesman. "You don't have any soaps on you," the officer points out. "Oh, I left them in my car," the man responds. The officer insists on accompanying him to verify. Cornered, the gangster pulls out his revolver and opens fire. Billie seizes the diversion to escape via the emergency staircase, lugging a heavy bag of ammunition, and rushes to the sedan, ready to save her man once more. Johnny provides cover, firing at the second agent through the door. The officer fires back from the corridor and a shootout ensues. In the car, Billie, with the engine running, keeps her eyes on the staircase. Finally, Johnny appears, his blood staining the snow. He's wounded. There's no way Billie will let him be killed before her eyes. Panicked, she trembles behind the wheel, the tires skidding in the snow. Once again, she pulls him away from the gunfire, whistling around their heads. Inside, the 2 agents discover a chaotic assortment of items strewn everywhere. Swimsuits, slippers, underwear, kimonos, bathrobes, sets, about 30 dresses. They scramble to regain their bearings as Billie drives off with Dillinger lying wounded in the back seat. She is now a powder keg. An arrest warrant is issued against her. Billie is no longer just sought by the police, but by the formidable Bureau of Investigation and Hoover's men. In Chicago, her sister is interrogated and reveals a heavy secret she can no longer keep. It's not true that Evelyn has acne scars. I'm the one who has them in the family. A non-information the Bureau of Investigation couldn't care less about. Evelyn's photo, blemish-free and all, is distributed to every unit. Unfortunately, on April 4th, 1934, Betty Marks, wife of Chico Marx from the famous Marx Brothers comedy troupe, makes a stopover in Chicago before flying to the East Coast. Agents mistakenly think they've nabbed Billie. When Betty lands in New York, she's arrested and struggles to convince the agents that her husband's only crimes are on screen. For the fugitive, this mix-up is a gift. Billie now has an easier time shaking off the Bureau of Investigation agents who seem to mistake comedians' wives for outlaws. But where to go next? Robin Hood, another of her nicknames, urgently needs medical help for Johnny. Johnny was sitting there in the back seat, frowning and holding his leg, waiting for me to fetch Pie Day. But who to trust? This time, Billie fears for her own life, feeling like a walking target. I was sure that if I got out of the car and walked down the street, I would be shot in the back before taking 2 steps. She drives to one of their accomplices' safe houses, where a doctor sympathetic to their cause is called. Dr. Clayton May from Minneapolis treats Johnny, who shot in the leg must remain immobile for a few days to heal. With police everywhere, John picks the least obvious hideout, his father's farm in Mooresville. Billie tries to dissuade him, but he retorts, "Listen, sweetheart, who's smarter, me or the cops?" With such a compelling argument, she can only relent. It takes them 3 days to reach the farm. Once there, John tosses caution to the wind, openly sitting in the garden with his sisters, playing and singing. These simple pleasures rekindle his romantic side. Being shot has made him acutely aware of his mortality. He wants to establish his Eden with Billie and marry her without delay. And he wants to do it in Chicago in broad daylight. On April 9th, the couple arranges a meeting with an underworld contact at the State and Austin Inn Tavern at 416 North State Street. Billie enters the restaurant while Johnny waits in the car. But as soon as she steps inside, her premonition materializes. Half a dozen federal agents surround her, guns drawn, ready to shoot. His Indian princess is trapped. John, powerless, can only watch her get taken away under heavy guard, seething with rage as he flees the scene. Billie is interrogated for 3 days. Agent Harold Reinecker, in charge of the investigation, is determined to break her. But Billie knows how to get under his skin. She never meets his eyes during questioning and remains silent. They put her on a diet of dry bread and water, which she surprisingly doesn't mind. Losing patience, Reinecker slaps her across the face a few times. Nothing works. She claims to know nothing. She's earned her stripes as a full-fledged member of the Silent Clan. Being beautiful and silent is her calling. Maybe incarceration will change her. On April 13th, 1934, Billie Frechette is taken to the St. Paul Prison Depot, awaiting her trial. In room 317, Evelyn Frechette steps forward under the relentless flashes of photo reporters. Her hair is perfectly styled under a navy blue hat, worn at a chic angle. Matching leather gloves adorn her hands. She removes her long cream coat, revealing a modest, form-fitting spring dress in navy blue, with a wide white collar and a bow covering her neckline. She stands accused of harboring and aiding a criminal before Judge Gunnar Nordby's court. As the session begins, lad attorney A. Jerome Hoffman, assisted by Louis Paquette, Dillinger's loquacious lawyer, makes a shocking announcement. She pleads not guilty. "She's innocent," he proclaims. "A woman in love is often unaware of the activities of the man she loves," he dares to argue. Furthermore, Dillinger is far away now, probably hiding in Mexico, so there's no need to punish this poor girl. Unsurprisingly, the jury and the judge remain unmoved by this romantic plea. Hoffman has one last card to play, a more technical one. There's a procedural flaw involving those slaps. "When she had her head down on a few occasions, I lifted her chin with my fingertips," recalls the officer called to the stand. Louis Paquette steps in, trying to justify his lifestyle choice. "If Dillinger were to enter this room, you would all fall in love with him within an hour and a half." This new argument leaves the jury, composed mostly of 50-year-olds, perplexed. Clearly, Evelyn garners little sympathy from the court. In the eyes of the government, the presumption of innocence does not exist. A few days before the trial, J. Edgar Hoover receives information that solidifies his view of Evelyn Frechette as morally corrupt. She had recently undergone a curious gallbladder operation, spending several days in the clinic of Niles Mortensen, a known abortionist from St. Paul, who was also implicated with Dillinger. Simultaneously, Hoover's team intercepts a letter from Mary Kinder to Harry Pierpont, Dillinger's associate, in which she urgently requests money. It's urgent. You understand what for, don't you? We need to take care of me. It's been a while, almost 3 months. Marie Conforti, under interrogation in prison, confesses that she also received funds from a gangster for an operation he was supposed to handle. These revelations paint a damning picture. Not only are these women flouting the law and the sanctity of marriage, but they are also engaging in what Hoover sees as infanticide through voluntary termination of pregnancies. Before the judge, Evelyn Frechette maintains she never knew the true identity of her lover. She then corrects herself, adding that Johnny had probably mentioned some extortion activities, but she hadn't sought to know more. When asked why she stayed with a man she could at least suspect of being a criminal, she answers, "I loved Mr. Dillinger so much, you see. No matter the information available, women don't have to know a man before falling in love with him. And once they love him, they can't use what they know to make moral choices, because love guides them." This declaration of blind love strikes the courtroom, but it does little to sway the hard hearts of the jury and judge. Evelyn's plea falls on deaf ears as her romantic notion of love appears naive at best and complicit at worst. Hoover's damning evidence of her gallbladder operation and her association with known criminals taints her character irreversibly in the eyes of the court. The case looks grim, and Evelyn feels it. At noon during the lunch break, the court retires and the jury leaves the courtroom. Seizing the opportunity, the young woman mingles with the crowd and moves toward the exit. But before she can make her escape, one of the ushers spots her and grabs her by the arm, asking where she plans to go. She giggles and smiles but says nothing, before being promptly escorted back into the courtroom. 3 more prosecution witnesses take the stand. They testify to seeing her at Dillinger's apartment on Lexington Street, where he was hiding during the shootout with the police. The owner's wife identifies her, recalling she saw Evelyn return one evening and wash dishes on another occasion. Her lawyer tries to mitigate the damage, arguing this only proves a fleeting presence, not residency. Then the agent who knocked on the apartment door that day is called to the stand. "There is no doubt in my mind," he asserts. "Miss Frechette is indeed the woman whose voice I heard when I caught Dillinger. Miss Frechette has a distinctive voice." On May 23, 1934, Judge Nordby delivers an uncompromising indictment. Miss Frechette knew from the beginning the identity of John Dillinger. She knew he was a fugitive on the run. At 9:50 a.m., the jury returns from deliberation. Evelyn stands to hear the verdict: guilty, 2 years in prison. The fiancé of public enemy number 1 is promptly escorted to Milan prison in Michigan. "I'm a convict. I'm no longer Billie Frechette. I'm a number like Machine Gun Kelly's wife, who is also here, and like the rest of the girls in the center. Just a number now, in a federal prison." While Catherine Kelly laments her fate in this medium-security detention center, George sends her flowers from Alcatraz for her birthday. In a neighboring cell, Billie Frechette tries to understand how love could have led her to be deprived of her freedom like this. "I suppose this is where we all end up. Maybe I asked for it, but I keep telling myself that I'm different. I'm here because I fell in love with the wrong man. Not wrong for me, but wrong if I wanted to stay out of trouble. How can the instinct of the heart be condemnable? Only one important thing has happened in my life. Almost nothing happened before that, and I don't expect anything from now on, except perhaps new sorrows. This important thing that happened to me is that I fell in love with John Dillinger." On 22 of June 1934, John Dillinger celebrates his 31st birthday in charming company. While Billie Frechette scribbles love notes behind bars, Dillinger spends 2 days dancing, drinking, and more with another woman named Polly. He showers her with a dozen roses and a ring adorned with an amethyst, serenading her with the latest hit, All I do is dream of you. He talks about children, a home of their own, and his desire to retire from crime and buy a farm with chickens. Essentially, he's a walking genie, ready to grant all the wishes of his new conquest, a Santa Claus in a gangster suit. John met Polly a few days earlier in a bar frequented by the underworld where she does some side jobs. Since Billie is locked up for 2 years, he might as well console himself in the arms of another. Polly looks remarkably similar to Billie, with her thick, wavy brown hair. Born Edith Gertrude Hamilton in Canada in 1909, she emigrated with her family to the United States to Fargo, North Dakota. Unfortunately, her father died very young, leaving her mother to raise their 3 children alone. Polly then married a police officer from Gary, Indiana, but the marriage quickly dissolved due to neglect. Her husband blamed her for not being a true homemaker. Without a job or a ring on her finger, she met Anna Sage, a brothel keeper in Gary, by chance. The 2 women became friends. Anna's business became so prosperous that she soon opened another brothel in Chicago, one of the most profitable in the city, and easily convinced Polly to follow her there. As Dillinger dreams of a future with Polly, he conveniently forgets his current love, Billie, who is confined to a prison cell. While Billie pours her heart out onto paper, Dillinger pours drinks for Polly and croons sweet nothings. Polly's past of hardship and broken dreams seems a perfect match for Dillinger's life of crime and fleeting moments of luxury. She's found a new protector, and Dillinger has found a new muse. Polly, much like Billie, is drawn into Dillinger's dangerous orbit, charmed by his promises and allure. The fact that she ended up in the underworld after a failed marriage and tough upbringing makes her an ideal companion for a man like Dillinger, who thrives on chaos and unpredictability. Anna rented an apartment at 2420 Halsted Street, where she and Polly set out to craft their new life. Polly, ever the versatile performer, swapped her dancing shoes for an apron, becoming a waitress at the S&S Cafe on Wilson Avenue. Enter stage left, John, donning the alias Jimmy Lawrence, who strutted into the Barrel of Fun nightclub one June evening in 1934. He sauntered up to Polly and, with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, asked, "What would happen if I called you one night?" Patience might be a virtue, but John clearly hadn't gotten the memo. Polly, embracing the ambiguity of fate, challenged him to give it a whirl. Johnny, an eager beaver, dialed her number the very next evening and staked out the cafe. Ah, the golden rule of seduction. Revealed just enough to keep the prey guessing. He spun tales of his illustrious career at the Chamber of Commerce. Polly, half listening, couldn't help but notice his perpetual grin, his lips twitching at the corners like a mischievous puppet. It was love at first sight, that rare, once-in-a-lifetime kind. "The most important thing that has happened to me," she gushed. Johnny played the part of the dreamboat to perfection, showering her with gifts, planning outings, calling nightly post-shift, and whisking her off on romantic strolls. The fair was his domain, and rides were his never-ending joy. One memorable day, when their cart stalled atop a hill, Johnny remained as cool as a cucumber, reassuring Polly with his unshakable calm. She thought he feared nothing. Johnny, ever the imaginative one, dubbed her Countess, or, to spice things up, Cleopatra. "But darling, that was my favorite nickname," Polly remarked. Johnny, of course, omitted one teensy detail: his status as a fugitive living on borrowed time. With Hoover's agents swarming Chicago like bees to honey, no one dared offer him sanctuary, except Anna. Dillinger, not one to fuss, had simple requests: a home-cooked meal served with a side of affection. Conjugal bliss, however, eluded him like a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek. Polly, armed with lessons from her past marriage, vowed to fulfill his every culinary craving. The menu was straightforward: cookies and chicken with gravy, just like on the farm. That's what he loves. A medley of tomatoes, green onions and radishes accompanied the main course. Though he fancied steak, his ultimate comfort food was Irish-style frog legs when he was in seventh heaven. Johnny sweetened the deal with ice cream for dessert and a bounty of raspberries to savor the bright summer days. He also took Polly for walks, to the shooting range. Nothing says romance like the smell of gunpowder. She spent hours watching him practice, her admiration growing with each bullseye. He was a crack shot, drawing a crowd of onlookers who marveled at his precision. You'd think a supposed Chamber of Commerce model employee might raise an eyebrow or two here. But Johnny, with his gold-rimmed glasses and pencil-thin moustache, didn't exactly scream public enemy. In fact, he looked so harmless that people thought he was effeminate. Dillinger was a master of disguise, transforming from a notorious gangster into a comical sweetheart. He'd show up at Polly's work, pulling faces and playing the fool to make her laugh. The shyest boy I've ever seen, Polly mused. Never mind the surgical scars on his face, remnants of cosmetic surgery to mask his identity. "Listen, Countess, it was a car accident," he would say, feeding her lines smoother than his criminal record. Love, it turns out, is blinder than a bat in a blackout. Sure, he had his quirks. He wasn't exactly a fashion icon, always in that same grey suit. Yet he was the perfect gentleman, whisking her away to dinners and dancing in taxis. No matter where we dined, he always ordered a big red pepper before heading home. Suspicion? Not in this fairy tale. Anna, however, saw through John's charade with a clarity born of experience. She knew men well. After all, it was her business. Anna Sage, real name Cumpanas, hailed from what is now Romania, born between 1889 and 1892. Like many, she emigrated to the United States, escaping a violent marriage that left her penniless but with a son. She turned to the oldest profession, quickly climbing the ranks to become a renowned madam under the pseudonym Katie Brown. Even the police raids couldn't dim her status among the city's nocturnal elite. In her 40s, with an Eastern accent, a few extra pounds, 8 gold teeth and piercing black eyes, Anna was anything but inconspicuous. Immigration services had Anna in their sights, her passport confiscated, and deportation back to Romania loomed large. Johnny's presence was her golden ticket. She could trade him for a shot at staying in the States. Through her underworld network, Anna connected with an East Side cop, Sam Cowley, who relayed the scoop to the top brass. Hoover didn't need to think twice. The chance to nab Dillinger was worth any deal. The Bureau of Investigation geared up for a swift takedown. On Sunday, July 22, 1934, public enemy number 1, John Dillinger, enjoys a leisurely day at Jackson Park, attending Anna's son's baseball game while the girls pedal around on bicycles. He charmingly buys beers for both teams, handing them out personally, as dozens of policemen stealthily prepare their operation. The idyllic summer afternoon with family ends, and everyone heads back to the apartment. Ever the romantic outlaw, Johnny surprises Polly with gardenias. She's exhausted from the sweltering heat, so the big-hearted bandit decides to buy an electric fan and extra pillows. That night, he insists on seeing Manhattan Melodrama, a gangster film starring Clark Gable. Anna, making a fashion statement, dons a red dress. The trio arrives fashionably late to the Biograph Theatre at 2433 Lincoln Avenue. With the theatre packed, Polly and John squeeze into the third row, leaving Anna to sit alone in the back. As the film rolls, John makes a show of asking Polly for a kiss loud enough to make her blush and the neighbors cringe. Outside, Hoover's men lie in wait, ready to spring their trap. The film ends to applause, and the group steps out into the humid night. For over a week, Johnny has been pestering Polly to take his arm in public. This time, without prompting, she does. But the romantic moment is shattered by a gunshot. Polly screams as John, reaching for his .380 caliber pistol, is shot down, 2 bullets piercing his chest near the heart. Johnny hits the pavement, the legend ending in a pool of blood. In the ensuing chaos, 2 women are injured, but Anna and Polly escape unscathed. Back at the apartment, Anna swiftly changes clothes and disposes of Johnny's weapons in Lake Michigan. The police, unaware of her deal with the Bureau of Investigation, launch a manhunt for the elusive woman in red. True to his word, J. Edgar Hoover halts her deportation, sending her to Detroit temporarily and ensuring her protection from mob retaliation. But Anna, not one to enjoy Detroit's lackluster charms, returns to Chicago. Hoover, displeased with her disobedience, shows no mercy. Deported, Anna arrives in Timisoara, Romania, on May 14, 1936, permanently exiled from the New World. Meanwhile, agents transport John's body to the morgue, where they discover a photo of Polly Hamilton, his final love, stuck to the back of his watch. Early in 1936, Evelyn Frechette, Dillinger's former flame, steps back into the spotlight after a 2-year hiatus. Dressed to kill in black heels, a feathered hat, leather gloves, a knit scarf and a dark trench coat, she regains her freedom amidst the photographer's flashes, her smile defiant. Though she mourns Dillinger's death and chooses to overlook his infidelities, she's got bigger plans. Evelyn pens a show, Crime Doesn't Pay, revealing the inner workings of the crime syndicate. Despite the risk to her life, she embarks on a 5-year tour, transforming their gritty love story into nightly entertainment for captivated audiences. Evelyn eventually returns to her ancestral Menominee reservation, marrying several times. She passes away on January 13, 1969 in Shawano, Wisconsin, at the age of 61. Her life, a testament to love, danger and resilience, echoes the tumultuous legacy of John Dillinger.